They swore this would never happen again. No headlines. No leaks. No more public bloodletting under the golden crest of Buckingham Palace. But 5 minutes ago, everything changed. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The doors that were quietly bolted shut over a year ago, they're opening. And the winds coming through aren't silent anymore. Because tonight, we're not revisiting an old scandal. We're witnessing a new decision, a deliberate, calculated, quiet reversal. A confidential investigation, once sealed, redacted, and buried beneath layers of polite press statements, has just been reopened. Officially, publicly. And this time, they're not hiding that it's about her. Now ask yourself, why now? Why is the palace going back into the very storm they tried so hard to outrun? And more importantly, who made them? Because, if the whispers are true, and tonight they're louder than ever, this isn't just about a few angry ex-staffers or recycled headlines. It's about a name, a file, and a truth so inconvenient, someone once risked the crown's reputation to keep it quiet. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's take a breath. Step back and look at what's really happening, piece by piece. This is not a tabloid rerun. This is a live wire. And it just sparked again. Let me take you back to March 2021, just before Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's now infamous Oprah interview sent shockwaves around the globe. Another drama, quieter, more insulated, was brewing behind the palace gates. An article published by The Times alleged that Meghan, during her time as a working royal, had been the subject of internal complaints by palace staff, bullying, intimidation, emotional manipulation, terms that, at the time, were flung like knives and then tucked away just as quickly. The palace's response? A statement so delicately worded, it almost felt like a sigh. They said they would look into the allegations, that their HR team would review the circumstances, and then silence. Months passed, then years. Eventually, it was quietly announced, in the softest press advisory possible, that the review was complete, but the results would not be published, ever. Just think about that. The monarchy, already under intense scrutiny over issues of race, mental health, and transparency, chose to shelve its own findings. No public report, no accountability, no names cleared or condemned. And just like that, the storm passed, or so we thought. Because tonight, the palace has done something no one expected, and frankly, something most people assumed they would never do. They've confirmed the investigation is being reopened, not reviewed, not reconsidered, reopened. Which means someone, somewhere, said, "We didn't get everything. We need to go back." Here's where it gets even more intriguing. This wasn't announced at a press conference. There was no flashy release, no Buckingham seal on letterhead in a prime red box. No, it came through a leak. A whisper that became a quote. And a quote that was quietly confirmed. An anonymous palace aide, the kind who never speaks unless someone tells them to, reached out to two separate high-level journalists. Both were told the same thing. There is now a renewed internal process underway. Fresh statements are being collected. Former staff are being politely re-engaged. And above all, there is new material, testimony, evidence, records. Let that sink in. Someone who hadn't spoken before, or hadn't been allowed to, is talking now. and they've said enough to restart an entire royal probe that was, for all intents and purposes, dead. But here's the part they didn't say outright, not in quotes, not in print, just between the lines.
This isn't just about Meghan, it's about them.
The palace, and the fear of what might happen if they don't get ahead of this. Let me ask you something. Why seal an investigation in the first place? You don't do that when there's nothing to see. You do it when the implications are too big, too dangerous, too close to someone powerful. And in this case, those implications didn't stop at Meghan. From what we've uncovered so far, and believe me, we've been watching this space for a long time, the original complaints weren't just accusations of personal behavior, they were systemic. Allegations of a toxic environment, emotional distress, manipulated communications, and, perhaps most damaging of all, complicity, not from Meghan, from those who knew what was happening and let it continue. Which is why this reopening matters. Because it's not just a he said, she said, it's a test of whether the monarchy can police itself, whether it can admit fault, or whether it will once again choose silence over sunlight. And maybe, just maybe, someone inside the palace has decided the cost of silence is too high, or worse, no longer sustainable. There's something else. In the last 6 months, we've noticed a shift. Small at first, almost imperceptible, but undeniable once you piece it together. Former staff, who once clammed up at the mere mention of legal counsel, are suddenly commenting in vague but pointed ways. Aides who left quietly have been showing up at events, reappearing in social spaces where they know they'll be seen. And a particular set of internal emails, once thought to be deleted, is rumored to have been recovered. We can't confirm all of this. Not yet. But in the world of palace politics, this is movement. And movement this quiet is never accidental. Somewhere, someone's pulling a thread, and we're just beginning to see the fabric come undone. So what triggered this now? Why, after all this time, would Buckingham Palace reverse a decision it fought so hard to bury? We don't know for certain. But we do know something happened 2 weeks ago. Something that caused a confidential meeting between at least 3 senior palace advisors, including one with a direct line to King Charles. Something that led to a flurry of back-channel communications. Something that made them revisit that file. The one that was sealed, redacted, hidden. And according to 2 independent sources close to the royal household, the contents of that file are not what the public was led to believe. There are names, dates, messages, contradictions, some of which implicate not only Meghan, but figures who tried to shield her or shield the institution from her fallout. And that's where things start to get complicated, because reopening this investigation doesn't just reopen the past, it risks unraveling the present. The Sussex brand, as controversial as it is, has always carried the implied moral high ground. Victims of exclusion, targets of racism, champions of modernity. But what happens if that brand collapses under scrutiny? What if, and we're not drawing conclusions yet, but what if the woman positioned as the palace's most wounded survivor, is also its most dangerous disruptor? And what if the people who let her in knew it all along? This story is about more than Meghan Markle. It's about a system designed to protect itself, even at the cost of truth, even at the cost of people. But sometimes the cracks get too wide, and truth, whatever form it takes, begins to slip through. That's where we are now. The seal is broken. The door is creaking open, and behind it are voices we were never supposed to hear. But what exactly are they saying? And more importantly, who's finally listening? Because what comes next might change everything if we get an eye. And no one, not even Meghan, saw it coming. But here's the part we're still trying to understand. Who made the first move? Because Buckingham Palace doesn't act on impulse. Not with matters like this. Not with her. Was it a senior advisor who finally cracked under the weight of too many buried reports? A lawyer reading something they'd missed the first time? Or maybe, just maybe, this didn't start inside the palace at all. Maybe the pressure came from outside. Think about it. What if a key figure, someone whose name was never supposed to be tied to this, decided the truth had been manipulated? Or, worse, erased? There are whispers. Not confirmed. Not yet, but loud enough to chase down a name. Someone whose testimony was reportedly removed from the initial review. Not redacted, not edited. Removed. And that silence? It started to unravel everything else. Because if one account was erased, how many others were distorted? And who exactly stood to benefit? Let's talk about what was actually said in that leak. Not just the headlines, the language. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't even an apology. It was clinical.
A renewed internal process is underway, the aide said.
A careful phrase, sterile, detached. But hidden beneath it was something far less neutral, a sense that someone, perhaps more than one person, has come forward with something new. New evidence, new memory, new courage. And if that's true, then the entire structure built around the old sealed file, the one they thought would never see daylight again, is now at risk. This is what we mean when we say it's not just about Meghan, it's about the machinery. The palace doesn't panic easily.
But this is movement.
And movement in silence is always a sign. So what are we looking at? Best case? A legitimate reconsideration, one aimed at transparency, at accountability. Worst case? A quiet effort to control what leaks before it explodes. Because you don't reopen an investigation like this unless you're trying to get ahead of something that's already out there or about to be. And here's the part that's especially telling. Not a single member of the royal family has made a personal comment. Not Charles, not William, not even the palace's most reliable damage control operatives. Nothing. Just and in royal PR terms, that's practically screaming. So, here we are. The file that was never meant to be revisited has been cracked open. Testimonies, long buried, are being exhumed. Voices, once edited out of the narrative, are being reinserted, whether the palace likes it or not. But now the question shifts. Because if this was only about the past, it might have stayed sealed. But someone believes this still matters now. Someone thinks this isn't over, that the behavior at the center of those complaints wasn't isolated, wasn't circumstantial, that it was predictive. And that's what changes everything. Because this isn't just about accountability, it's about protection. What is the palace trying to protect now? And from whom? We're going to walk you through it. Every whisper, every file, every contradiction, piece by piece, until we understand not just what they buried, but why they're digging it back up now. But first, we need to go back to the very beginning, to the sealed file. What was in it? Who touched it? And what, or who, made it too dangerous to publish? That's where we go next. And what we've uncovered inside might just explain everything they were trying to hide. It didn't just disappear. That's the first thing you need to know. This so-called sealed report, the one Buckingham Palace refused to release publicly, it didn't vanish. It wasn't shredded. It wasn't locked in a vault beneath Westminster, like some historical relic they hoped the world would forget. No, it's very much still there. And tonight, for the first time, parts of that file are being spoken about. Quietly, carefully.